Good morning. Welcome to the panel discussion, Economic Governance in a New Energy Era. My name is Rita Rudusha, and I will be your moderator today. We are meeting this week under an overarching theme of volatile to versatile. And nowhere is that challenge more visceral and more urgent than in energy. We will have a lot to unpack this hour, and we'll have an excellent panel with you today, and I will introduce them in a minute. But first, I wanted to turn to you and say that you will be very much part of this conversation. We would very much like you to participate, listen carefully, ask questions, and use Slido either through QR code or go to slido.com and enter the code 9830251 to access this panel discussion and submit your questions. We'll have ample time towards the end of this hour where your questions will be voiced and will be part of this conversation. This event is also live streamed, so welcome to audiences online. And for everybody who has something to say, to comment on what you are hearing on energy and economic governance and new energy era, you are welcome to use hashtag EBRDAM to submit your thoughts on the platform of your choice. But to set the scene, let's look at the story from a country where EBRD provided support and where reform and investment are already moving together, providing results, and we will look at some results in action.
Across the bank's countries of operation, reform creates the conditions for change. Investment turns those conditions into real outcomes. Stronger markets, better services, and long-term value. In Uzbekistan, reforms are opening the door to private investment and sustainable growth. In energy, clearer rules and stronger institutions are helping attract capital, scale renewables, and strengthen the systems that power the economy.
Since a couple of years, the government of Uzbekistan has put in place some measures and reforms to attract the investors. And specifically in the renewable energy sectors, they launch open tenders, transparent procedures, tax exemptions. These reforms are really helpful for new investors like Voltalia to come into the market.
Reform opens the door, but investment, partnership, and delivery turn that opportunity into tangible infrastructure.
We were capable to bring a new source of generation of electricity to create new jobs. About 700 workers, between 30 and 40 workers, working for the operation and maintenance of the plant, and to involve all the local communities.
Uzbekistan shows what is possible when reform and investment move together. Cleaner energy, stronger confidence, skilled jobs, and long-term value for the economy. A model that can be replicated across the bank's countries of operation.
So, from volatile to versatile, the recent geopolitical shifts have significantly reshaped energy security in the EBRD's countries of operation. And this volatility, of course, is intensified by climate crisis that is still there and also getting stronger. That leaves the countries gathered here with something that they haven't faced before, really a tall order. So they have to transition their energy systems. They have to build grids that are resilient to all the shifts and vulnerabilities. And they also have to attract capital to do it all, and all at the same time. The EBRD's energy sector strategy and economic governance strategy share a common premise that investment alone is not enough. Assets without institutions are stranded. Grids without good governance are vulnerable. And finance without reform is just a short-term fix. So countries do need to accelerate the green energy transition, foster resilient and transparent reforms, and private sector-led market economies need to be strengthened against this volatile environment that we all inhabit. So today's panel will help us unpack this tall order facing the countries from 4 different perspectives. Let me introduce you to our star-studded, I would say, panel of speakers. First, representative of the host country, Rolands Irklis.
Hello.
Chairman of the management board of Akcijas Augstsprieguma Tīkls, Latvia's transmission system operator. Closer to me, Eugeniu Osmocescu, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Development and Digitalization of the Republic of Moldova and EBRD Governor for Moldova. Melis Ekmen-Taboyer, Managing Director for Policy Strategy and Delivery at EBRD. And last and definitely not least, Jeppe Kofod, Chair of the Supervisory Board of Ukrenergo, Ukraine's national electricity transmission system operator. So the question we are here to answer is simple, even though the answers may not be. What governance choices in boardrooms, in control rooms, and in ministries most quickly turn energy volatility into energy versatility? So let's find out. And it's always good to start with data. So here's an insight into current uptake of renewables across the EBRD regions. Let's look at data first to inform our discussion. I hope you can all see the overall positive dynamics. And here comes the EBRD average. And the purple line above EBRD average is Central Europe and the Baltic states. And Southeastern Europe and Turkey are also at the top. So the uptake of renewables is showing a very optimistic picture. Let's get down to discussing the issues highlighted above, and I will start with Rolands Irklis, if I may. So, Rolands, Augstsprieguma Tīkls is central to Latvia's energy security. It covers transmission, synchronization, market access, balancing, and renewables. So, can we talk about the key governance lesson from Latvia's perspective? And maybe focusing on synchronization. 2 minutes to make your case. What's the key governance lesson?
So last year, February, we disconnected from Russian and Belarusian grids and synchronized this continental Europe. It was just a lot of more about that. So it was about building new infrastructure and it was building a new markets. So we built a new power lines, we reconstructed the old ones, we built synchronous condensers, we built the batteries. So we made the system to work in the new conditions, and at the same time we created market conditions for this new environment. So, for example, what was quite unique, we established Baltic balancing capacity market. So this is a unique market in Europe and in the whole world. So instead of building our own individual capacity markets, we build one common for 3 Baltic states. By this we are expanding it, so making it bigger, more competitive, and at the same time reducing significantly the cost for each country. So that's one example how we governed. So we built the infrastructure in one place and added the markets to this infrastructure so that it can work in the purpose of the country and the purpose of adding new services, new generation, and new capacities.
Can you give us an insight about the timeline when all these things that you mentioned were happening at the same time?
So it started already in 2000s, the first ideas that we had to synchronize with continental Europe, but the most active part started in 2019 when the clear timeline was scheduled, how we had to proceed. And the most intensive part was after 2022, February, because initially it was planned a little bit later, 2026, beginning of 2026. But after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, full-scale invasion, then we accelerated our plans. We decided to go ahead 1 year earlier. So all the projects which we planned actually need to be completed either on time or even before the time. For example, this Baltic balancing capacity market, that was a big challenge, but we developed the IT system like almost in one and a half year only. And that was real achievements that just a week before the synchronization, it went live and operates since that very, very well.
So you had to accelerate considerably
exactly. And what was a challenge as well, of course, is that it's not only one national project, it's a big project where 4 countries is involved, 3 Baltic states plus Poland, all the synchronous zone of Europe, the catalog of measures, different legal things as well. So it's quite big project. And actually it was recognized in worldwide as well. Last year we got the highest award of Project Management Institute of the United States. So it's like Oscar of project management in the world. So we got this high prize from this Management Institute for developing and executing this project.
Congratulations on that. So now let's look at that from the government perspective, and Evgeny, I'd like to address you next. So what is the role of government in turning energy security from a policy, so you have a policy and you have plans, into something that is credible and investable?
Thanks for the question, but with your permission, from the beginning, just for the entire audience, except the Moldovans here, or those working in Moldova, to understand the geopolitical, economical situation the country is in, not being a member of the European Union yet, but being a small one under permanent attacks, hybrid, energy crisis, everything. So the way that the Moldovan government has moved, it moved at the highest possible speeds. Hearing the data in terms of timeline, the way that your country went, in our case it was a period of less than 3 years that we had to react and to be agile, otherwise we are fragile. So a little bit of historical data, we are zero dependent on Russian energy supplies. We've cut the gas, we've cut the electricity, and it was even before the war started in Ukraine. So unfortunately we went through a couple of crises, but we've learned our lessons, and the government proactively addressed these lessons. And as of end of December 2022, if I'm not mistaken, we're not importing any more Russian gas, and now we're completely independent from the Russian electricity. We do have a vulnerability there, pardon, but we're working on that together with especially Ukraine and Romania on the other side, which has built so-called energy islands along the border with Moldova in case of potential blackouts. Thanks God, nothing has happened dramatically, though the Moldovan assets on Ukrainian soil were targeted by the Russian attacks, direct ones. So what the government has to do, and I'm getting to a question, sorry for a bit of an introduction.
Thank you for this introduction. And thank you for a very tweetable quote, be agile, not to be fragile, I think.
Hashtag ads,
hashtag,
be agile, not fragile. Moldova is never complaining, so we act. So what the government has to do, the government has to create level playing field rules for the actors, being on the state-owned enterprise sector or private sector. So it has to create rules. And what we've seen in case of Moldova, the private sector was agile, even compared to the government. The private sector is able to move faster. We just have to be there to assist it and not to interfere. Otherwise, nothing would happen. So that's why chapeau bar for the Moldovan private sector, including FDIs and the local companies, which are actively pushing the reforms together with us, and they, if needs be, are hammering in our heads what needs to be done.
Thank you.
But again, this is deregulation, this is digitalization, this is AI application, this is transmission, supply, everything. So that's the thing, and we have to.
Can you provide a quick case study that would illustrate that, how you help the private sector?
Well, again, that was a political will first, to cut all the dependency from the Russian suppliers, and then all the independent regulators being set up. Well, it was set up, but strengthening the independent regulators, strengthening the rules, changing the methodology, and certainly dividing the transport and supply.
Thank you. Jeppe, you need to be agile to the highest degree. So Ukraine's grid continued operating under attacks in Europe, and we can see the Ukraine's energy resilience illustrated here on the graph. So we see the white vertical line marks 2022. The Russian full-scale invasion, and you see what happens to the energy sector. So you had to be, Jeppe, Ukrenergo had to operate under sustained attacks, all the while integrating with Europe. So what specific governance or operational capabilities proved decisive that you would not do in peacetime?
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having this debate. Very, very important. You know, Ukrenergo is kind of the brain in the integrated power system of Ukraine. And we're operating, you know, under the most extreme conditions of any TSO in Europe at the moment, of course. I think that background is very important. When it comes to well, let me start with an image, because we talk a lot about, you know, power plants, cables, transformers, physical assets. All of that is essential. But I think for Ukraine experience, it's also more than that, you know. A power system only survives when it can be coordinated, protected, balanced, and operate under these extreme pressure. We are operating 16,500 kilometers of high voltage network. So we are one of Europe's 5 biggest TSOs in electricity. We have 92 substations, and we still transmit 109 billion kilowatt hour of electricity annually, despite the war. And I think one of the initial good things was, of course, when they took the decision to synchronize with the continental European grid already a few weeks after the full invasion started, back in the 16th of March 2022. And then also Ukrenergo became full member of NCOE 1st of January 2024. So we are integrating rapidly in Europe. So what I wanted to say, this is not just a technical story, it's also a story about European integration that help us in this situation. At the same time, if you look from 22 until today, we can see that our infrastructure has been affected, and we have estimated our damage, including in the occupied territory, in the order of 2 billion euro. So that is a lot of losses, and half of the assets, as I said, affected. So I want to highlight, if I may, just a few, let's say, capabilities that we need to be in place in that type of situation. First, I would say protection before impact. What we have done is work on protection of our substations, our grid from the outset. Today, I think more than 80% of our substations is protected in secondary level protection, meaning concrete around auto transformers and drone nets and so on, which then also mean that when there are attacks, whether drones or missiles, the damage is there, of course, but you can limit the worst damage, so to speak. So it will also be easier to repair, which is the second thing I want to mention. Repair is very important. I mean, because if you lose an auto transformer, it's not just a piece of equipment. It's like, you know, no electricity, no water pumping, no heating, no communication. So it affects all of society. So spare equipment that can rapidly be deployed is and repaired is important, you know, repair crews and so on. Then I would think, thirdly, if I may, operational discipline. In crisis, the temptation is to improvise, of course, in a way, and you sometimes have to do some kind of improvises. But a power system only survives if there's like a clear procedures, clear responsibilities, and also disciplined decisions. And I think we know that as CSOs. Then coordination as the fourth, I would say, is key, of course, with the government, with the regulator, with the generators of power in the country, and with distribution companies, with the municipalities, which are also heavily affected, and the utilities, with European TSOs, with NCOE, with international finance institutions. And coordination is not just something like nice to have. I think it's an operational capacity you need to have in place to survive in these extreme conditions. And also this synchronization I talked about in March 22, what it also did and is doing is implementing European standards, system discipline, operational trust, market alignment. So it's not only about wires, it's about rules and confidence in the system when we are integrated into European energy market. And then finally, and we can get back to that later, I would say corporate governance, very important. I would say, even during war, issues like transparency, accountability, management discipline, supervisory board oversight, which the supervisory board I led, also compliance and investor confidence must be protected. Probably even more important. It's always important, but more important in these circumstances. The clear roles between the different entities is very, very important to respect.
We will return to some of the topics that you mentioned in the discussion part, but I just wanted a very, very quick follow-up question. So what do you think is the secret of Ukrenergo's success of staying disciplined under ballistic missiles?
I think it's a mixture of the things I said before, but without this synchronization in March 2022, without this dedication to become integrated into European energy system, European Union, the rules that underpin this, then it will be very difficult. That's one aspect. But the other is, as I said, protection. I mean, we started already early protection. I mean, even before the full invasion, we had huge programs of cyber protection, also dating back to after 2014 and some experience and negative experience on that cybersecurity. But of course, when the full invasion started, then also ensuring that we rapidly build protection in our substations and making it something that we follow very, very closely. So I think that is some of the key things. And then, of course, I would say now I represent the supervisory board. I'm not the management executive body here, but having the governance structure in place that all our stakeholders can trust is key. I mean, without that, then it's hard to, get even grants or financing for any of the things we want to do. So this is a key priority for us as well.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. And Melis, now from the EBRD perspective, if you could provide kind of insight into EBRD's approach in how you look into bankable projects and to what degree any of these kind of hashtag discipline, hashtag agility, hashtag good governance play into that when you are thinking of combining investment with reforms and looking for bankable projects.
Thank you very much, Rita. Actually, for me, it's now very easy to reflect because I feel like I'm in great company and we are speaking the same language. And that is very much speaking to our investment philosophy. So as you know, EBRD is an institutional investor, but with a mandate on impact. And what we do is we combine our investment with policy dialogue and technical assistance where we are helping to increase capabilities. And what we do is, our aim is always to leverage our investments to push the envelope on the policy side. And when I'm talking about the policy side, we don't really look at whether an investment is bankable on a standalone basis, but we would like to see whether a system can sustain the investments over time. And here, when we are looking at energy security, and especially in this industry, we think the infrastructure needs to be supported by credible rules, capable institutions, accountable companies, and transparent markets and resilient grids. I think my colleagues have all alluded to the same principles, and we can go in details. And our role here is to combine our investments again with reform so that the projects make sense to strengthen the market. I'm reiterating this message because it's extremely important. And our philosophy with our economic governance strategy, which you have been hearing probably over the past couple of days, it has been quite prominent, is recognizes very much that the policy engagement creates conditions for investments. And in return, the investments provide the leverage to accelerate reform. I think they go very much hand in hand. And our finance gives the reform a practical traction. And here you alluded a little bit about the EU, and EU has been a policy anchor for us, for example, in some of the countries, especially when it came to the connection. And what we think is when we have the reform right, it also reduces our investment risk and makes all of this possible and a little bit more future-proof. I'm very much interested in discussing also how we react to the crisis, hopefully in the coming minutes. But I'll stop here.
So you see in all the examples mentioned here the good signals for...
I'm very pleased to what I'm hearing, because we are talking about not only the technical realities, what we actually need in the system, but we are talking about governance as a key anchor to progress in the industry and to ensure energy security.
Thank you very much. We will go down now to the granular level and look at individual elements that need to be considered to make energy security stronger and make projects bankable. But first, I just wanted to remind you that you have a chance to participate in this discussion. If you go to Slido, please submit your questions either by scanning the QR code or going to slido.com and entering number 9830251. 9830251. I'm looking forward to your questions, and we'll have time for those later on. So let's go down to really the granular level and decode what makes the energy system investable. And we'll start with the grids. Roland, I'm looking at you. So, because the grid is a backbone of the energy system, what governance conditions need to be in place to make it a good investment?
Thank you.
Investment case.
Yes. So, I already told last year we invested a lot in the grid. So, new power lines built, reconstructed. New capacities added, synchronous condensers help with inertia to help integrate renewable generation. So actually we prepared our grid for a lot of new connections for renewables and also for consumption levels. What we are now looking forward is, of course, we will need to build additional transformers, substations, power lines. But these days, actually, we can get out from that grid much more than before. So it's not about building so much more as to invest smarter. And so we are looking on new solutions, how we can get through the same power lines, through the same substations, more volumes. And nowadays, the market offers different new technologies which can help you, starting from physical technologies and continue with IT technologies. For example, we are now piloting the projects with dynamic line rating, so you can in real time measure the capacity of that power line. Before that, we did it in static mode, and by this technology, you can add sometimes even up to 40% capacity compared to what was before. So by using the same transmission line, you can provide more. And this is very important because during the times when you have a lot of new generation, a lot of new consumption, you can get into the trouble with overcapacity in your line, and sometimes you have to switch off some producers. So this is a way how you can connect more, and at the same time not disconnect in the times when there is oversupply. And that's one example. And then also, I think what is important about the markets. So we can develop markets in the more smarter way. One example I already mentioned is Baltic balancing capacity market. It's a very smart way how to create bigger market and how to reduce the costs and increase the competitiveness of that market. So there is other solutions. So always when we look on the markets, we look how we can do it in the smartest way. For example, again, from this market, the outcome is also, of course, the cost for the balancing, and the way how we distribute this cost. And we found the ways that we can distribute this cost also partly to the imbalances. And what it created another incentive. So new companies, generators, even consumers, they now are more incentivized to reduce their imbalances. And the one way how to reduce it is to put the batteries, to connect the battery to your solar park or a wind park. So we incentivized hybridization of this new generation capacities, new projects. And again, it's very good because these batteries then again compete in this balancing capacity market and reduce the total cost. So by smart regulations, by smart solutions, also from regulatory point of view, you can create right incentives for the market, and the market will provide.
Can you name some examples of such incentives, of encouraging, for example, battery use?
Yeah, this is one of the examples. So we allocated the part of this balancing costs also to imbalance payments. So, and the way how companies can reduce their imbalance payments is to reduce imbalance. And imbalance can be reduced on technological ways. So you can so put the battery, so it helps for renewable generation projects to reduce their imbalances, reduce their cost, and give back to the market with additional flexibility. And so it's a win-win story, because the market for balancing capacity market gets more competitive. We get new investments in our system. Our system has more balancing resources, which is good for security of supply. So there is a lot of winning stories by one regulatory decision and market solution.
Thank you. Jeppe, if you could continue and provide your insight into the same, the kind of governance conditions needed to make it an investable. And in your conditions, of course, it's much tougher than in peacetime, but still.
No, but I think everything what Roland said was very important, and a lot of that can be done also in Ukraine, and is being done today, like utilizing the grids much more smarter, actually also applying artificial intelligence and so on to ensure that capacity can come up. So I think it's really important, and I think what we have to think if in this discussion, I think investors, they can accept risk, but they cannot really accept uncertainty. So we have to bring down uncertainty because risk can be priced, and but uncertainty is what is really not good. And in Ukraine we have, of course, a 10-year transmission system development plan. It has to be a bit live document because of the war situation we face this winter. As you know, heavy attacks on our energy system, especially generation. I mean, sometimes we have a deficit of 6 to 7 gigawatt, in the system. So there has to be load shedding. It's really extreme situation. So there is also, of course, a plan developed how to get more generation online. I don't want to go too much into detail here, but I think what is important is like grid planning has to be credible and like transparent, so it's all actors can see it. Transparent connection procedures for new projects, very important, I think. Tariff credibility. I mean, in the case of Ukraine, until last year, 2025, if you look at the tariff we got to operate us as a TSO, it was always under tariffed. Yeah. So in the previous year, in 24, 23, and so on. So it has a huge financial burden to the company. Now we have tariffs since 25 and also 26 that reflects the cost. But then, of course, this winter, for example, we have seen, that our planned volume of transmission of electricity has gone down dramatically. So, of course, we have not, and we still have to operate Reconstruction. So we have, of course, a huge problem there. So it has to be credible tariffs and also, adjusting tariffs. Then balancing arrangement, you were talking about it as well, I think is very important. Ancillary service market, and also confidence with contracts are being respected and so on. And just one example, if I may, and then I would stop. It's as of April 2026, I checked the number, so we added 647 megawatt of entirely new capacity operating on the basis on concluded contracts. And that is predominantly like energy, battery energy storage, which now is in the Ukrainian grid, and you didn't see that a few years ago. And that is key, like you're also doing here. I think, turn flexibility in the system into an investable product. I think that's key message for us.
Melis, you are shaking your head. Agree?
I will repeat, really, because like I said, I'm really lucky and really pleased to hear that we are really speaking the same language. I mean, clearly, energy transition depends on the grids. And for us, the most important condition is you have got the credible system planning, but also credible network planning, which are the regulations. And just listening to you, I'm thinking again, connection rules, CapEx planning, right, balancing arrangements, right, tariff treatments. Yeah. If these are unclear, renewables, storage, flexibility, everything will suffer. So in the end of the day, I think the priorities have been really very clearly outlined here. And investors need to be able to rely on the network codes, right? So they need to know how they will connect, how the costs are allocated, how curtailments and balancing risks are managed, and you both alluded to the same, and whether the system has credible revenues to invest. So again, the predictability on the finances are extremely important. And we see these as governance questions as much as the technical ones. And maybe two things, and I think you are a main testament here, actually, in both countries. Resilience is extremely important. And grid investment is not only about capacity, right? It's also whether the system can weather the storm, which you are, and operate reliably under pressure. And again, these depend not only on the standards, but also institutions and how they are managed. So for us, really, stability and predictability is key, but also how you behave under crisis. Right. And these are very well summarized by my colleagues here.
Yeah, Evgeny, I would like to hear from you on the topic of resilience, because you are also in the crisis-prone environment, so close to the front line, so to speak. So how can a government maintain system resilience and integration without losing market discipline or investor confidence?
Well, I would definitely, sorry.
Yeah.
I would definitely echo what has been said so far.
Yeah.
And in terms of resilience, again, I would just ask you to think about the geographical position of the country, and then we wouldn't be able to be resilient without the resilience of Ukraine. And we speak here literally about cases, bombardments. And I gave you the example when the Moldovan assets were bombarded on the Ukrainian soil. If not the Ukrainian resilience, interference and help, as well as some of the 6 countries, members of the European Union, when Ukraine, in detriment of its own population, has supplied into the Moldova and other countries, then we would have blackouts. So the technical team had to be deployed, if I'm not mistaken, from the Zaporizhzhia region to the Donetsk region to fix the problem. So that's about the resilience. This is about the partnership as well among the countries, European Union. It's about the partnership between the country and IFIs, for instance, EBRD. And in case of Moldova, we have to operate at such a speed that sometimes we are lagging behind in terms of certain areas. And there's a risk that something would fall under the cracks.
Such as? Which areas would those be?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So innovation, AI. That's why the Minister of Energy, by the way, is the first one in our country that implements the sandbox approach. So we let the kids play there, so let them do something, but to come up with solutions. So that's the thing. We don't have the luxury of time. I was saying yesterday during the Outlook session dedicated to Moldova that we shall operate now not in terms of months, not in terms of days, but sometimes in terms of hours. And there's the potential risk. But I completely do agree, investors look for predictability. They do afford the risks, but not predictability being not there. So that's the most important, transparent rules, predictability, and going ahead with full speed in terms of corroborated approach in Southeast Europe.
Yeah.
Laws, regulations, these are all nitty-gritty details. It's everything there. So, but you have to have a strategic approach.
Thank you. Jeppe, I wanted to bring you back on the topic of cooperation. How does that work in case of Ukraine, given all the challenges?
Yeah. Well, the cooperation...
regional, yes.
But Moldova, of course, is key, as we also, as you know, are very integrated. And we have, with the Ukraine TSO and the Moldovan TSO, a very good cooperation. And I think it's key to resilience that is being deepened. Also, we are all in the common trajectory to join the European Union. So I think this is this formed also some of the regulatory and more technical part of it, and I think that is a big strength in all of this.
If you need another hashtag, I was saying it yesterday. It's not about Ukraine and Moldova to secure themselves being part of the European Union. Europe needs to enlarge for its own security, having these two countries in the European Union.
Okay. European Union, Melissa, I would like to come back to you. You mentioned in passing, but I would like you to dwell on it a bit longer. How does the EU come into the equation? And how does the EU, especially in the context of accession countries, what role does it play?
Sure, but it's a very basic response to that, actually. It's simple because the EU accession creates certain rules and regulations which the countries need to kind of live up to. And that creates a very strong policy anchor. So at least you know what to work towards. And where we come as the EBRD, but also our fellow IFIs, is we really work with our counterparts, with our stakeholders, to help the countries to achieve those rules and regulations. So that is a very realistic anchor.
And how does it look from a Ukrainian perspective?
No, it's very important. I mean, we operate as a certified TSO, of course under Ukrainian law and regulation, but that all comes from the European Union. So when we talk about, and I hope we'll get time to talk about, like also economic governance, corporate governance, then there are some specific requirements for our independence, our professionalism, the different roles of the shareholder, we as a company, all the other stakeholders. So I think that is really what makes us investable, that there is this predictable framework going forward. And I agree, I think both Moldova and Ukraine can be a big assets for the European Union in the future, especially if we follow the line that I'm laying out here. I think it will be good.
Roland, Latvia, of course, is in the EU, but here are two accession countries, and Jeppe just told us the statistics of how large the Ukrainian energy sector is. What the cooperation looks like from the Baltic and Latvian perspective with these two accession countries?
So we cooperate quite closely, and there is benefits on both ways. So Ukraine has very hard times these days, but also they have very good lessons, and we can learn from their experience. And our colleagues are traveling time to time to Ukraine to learn from their experience, how to build our systems more resilient, how to protect our systems. We, in exchange, if we can say so, but it's not in exchange, it's, we provide different donations and support for Ukrainian side. This year alone, we sent 3 transformers to Ukraine and different other equipment as well, so to support them and to rebuild their energy system, which were destroyed during the winter time. And in Baltics, what we are doing now, I think it was mentioned before already. So there is security of supply resilience. There is two parts. One is to protect the system, and the other part is to build your capabilities to restore the system, because you cannot protect everything. And here as well, we in Latvia are planning and adding new emergency reserves and new technologies like mobile pylons, mobile substations, which can be deployed very fast way. And we are also strengthening our Baltic cooperation in this matter. So we applied together for EU funding. We got CEF funding, more than 100 million euros for 3 Baltic states plus Poland. And together with Baltic countries, we are now working on arrangements how we can share emergency reserves in times of crisis if we need so. So again, so looking how we can cooperate after the synchronization and build our systems more resilient together. Because we understand that if something happens in one country, we will feel in all Baltic states at the same time. So it's not like we are isolated somehow. If there is disruptions, big disruptions in one country, it affects everybody here. And therefore, it's very important that we plan our resilience together in bigger regions and some aspects over the whole Europe, actually.
But protection is very much also something that we need to think about in the Baltics.
Yes, we are thinking about, so part of that EU money which is allocated, EU funds is specifically for protection of infrastructure. So we are planning to build additional detection capabilities, video surveillance, anti-drone radars, walls around the most critical parts of our infrastructure, and so on, so on. So there is a different projects, both on protection side and to restoration emergency side, if needed.
How does that affect your planning?
So this, of course, goes into our 10 years investment plan, similarly as it is in Ukraine. So it's a common approach in the whole Europe, including Ukraine. So this year we have to submit our new 10 years investment plan, which we now have to submit every 2 years. So we will go to the regulator and we will convince the regulator that these are necessary investments and we have to go ahead. Because if of course it costs additional money and especially to protect the transformer with additional walls, sometimes it's the same cost which is cost of the transformer itself. But at the same time, if we think about the value which we lose if we have a blackout in that area, so that value lost is 10 times or more bigger than the cost of that additional protection measures. So therefore, we have to understand the risks and to invest accordingly. And this resilience actually starts with the risk management. So you have to understand your risks and then take decisions accordingly. And risk management becomes more and more difficult these days because this changing environment changes at such pace that it doesn't make sense to reevaluate your most critical risks once a year. You have to do it constantly, and if there is some new indicators, so add these new indicators to your risk assessment and start to rethink whether are you doing enough or you have to do something else.
Thank you very much. There's another hashtag for you. In addition to discipline, agility is risk management. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn to my trusted helper, thank you, and see how active you have been in submitting questions. So there's a question, again, Roland, I'm going to come to you. Do the Baltic states have competitive advantage in comparison to other regions, thanks to the grid synchronization project? And what are these advantages? Briefly, please, because we have quite a few questions. Yeah.
So we have a very good grid where to connect better than in many Western countries. So there is still free capacities. And with smart regulation, again, we found a way how to expand even those capacities. There was one bottleneck at one moment, but we changed the regulation so we can add more capacities to the network in a safe way, and now there is gigawatt capacities in several gigawatt capacities in Latvia and even more in other countries. And also this grid is very resilient to absorb the new renewable generations. Those investments in synchronous condensers, which provides inertia, which is very important during the times when you have mainly solar or wind generation, is very good also for resilience. So it's grid is prepared for new generation and also for new consumption if needed. So I know that in many European countries there is also very long queues to get connected from consumption point to the grid. So in Baltics it's much faster and easier to do.
Yes, I can attest to that because I have a couple of solar panels myself. Eugeniu, what is often missing between the reform law and the real market outcome?
What's missing? Well, it's missing basically in terms of enactment. I was saying about the high speed, but we don't have to lose the quality. So what's missing? It's time, the luxury of time.
The luxury of time. Here's another quote. You're very generous with your tweetable quotes this morning. Next question I will ask to Jeppe and Roland. We'll start with Jeppe. Which energy technologies do you believe will have the greatest impact on energy security? Renewables, nuclear, energy storage, hydrogen, and why?
Yeah, I speak from a Ukrainian perspective.
Yes.
Yeah? Of course, if you look at the situation today, the backbone of power generation is nuclear energy. Yeah, it's up to like I think 70% now of the energy of the power generation. So in the future, you will have one hand nuclear energy and also on the other hand renewables, meaning of course solar, wind, biomass, and so on, and then the traditional thermal power plants, the fossil-based power plants will be phased out. So that will be the future. And I mean, if you look at Ukraine, and that may be an opportunity also to to underline what I said before. I mean, there are clear, huge assets, potentials in the country. Yeah, I mean, if you take on the nuclear side, there is a plan to produce, I think it's 25 gigawatt by 2040. And on the renewable energy side, there is huge potential. They have, land which is cheaper than Western Europe. They have wind speed, many places which are higher. They have a lot of solar, of course, as well. There's a lot of biomass. You can make biomethane. All of that will enhance European energy security in the future if this integration, and it will continue with the EU energy market will continue to go so successfully. So the obstacle is, of course, ending the war, which we would like to, and then I think there will be a lot of potential. But even in wartime, the return on investment in energy sector is actually quite good, and it is something that people sometimes forget. But if you look at the projects that are actually there, it is actually good projects. We can, in Reconstruction, we can create the capability for this. I also think, if I look at TSOs around Europe, we would like to also be used as a brain for how this vision of developing a robust, resilient, decarbonized, secure energy system can look like.
Roland, anything to add to that?
I think for the future there is no one single technology or one single silver bullet. But the key words here is diversification. So the more diverse you have, solar, wind, nuclear, some dispatchable generation as well, the batteries. Yeah. So all this together creates resilience, and therefore I think it's more about flexibility and also about controllability. So dispatchable energy also is quite important, and flexibility, so you can at any time have access to other resources if some of the resources are not available for some reasons. And so probably I'm not so sure about the hydrogen which was mentioned in your question. This is still unclear. I think the hydrogen will find its place, but probably not in the whole energy system as the most important thing. So there is good usage cases for hydrogen, but probably not on the totally changing the landscape of how we produce and consume the energy.
Thank you very much. There's a question for you, Melis. How can you approach countries with political systems that may overlook areas like renewable energy or climate change, deeming them secondary? Then you have to be very diplomatic in your answer.
Look, I'll take the question from a step behind. And there was also another one which I saw on the screen briefly that was more alluding to what is economic governance, and I'm going to bring them together if that's okay. So we have introduced a new economic governance strategy, and it's all about market making. It's all about pushing for a private sector-led growth. And for that, what you need is you need your systems to work well. And we work on this one in 3 levels. First of all, you need the institutions. The institutions need to make sense, they need to be reliable, they need to work well. And they need to look at their energy systems also for diversification, and they need to rely on multiple resources. This is not all about resistance also, we are talking about more energy security. The second one is, beyond the regulations, you need to have the state-owned entities to be accountable and to be reliable for the high-quality delivery of goods and services. And they need to be able to create a level playing field. And thirdly, you need to work with institutions that very much have good corporate governance, and they also end up being reliable. Therefore, you can have flow of capital, both locally and internationally, in an area, in a time, multiple crisis time. We cannot really only talk about Ukraine because there are multiple areas that are impacting the energy sector today. Climate is one of them. Multiple wars is one of them, and advancements in technology, cybersecurity, we can go on, and these are all coming together. So it's very difficult for me to respond it from one perspective. One needs to take crisis management and our approach to how we are going to improve our energy systems in a more holistic manner, and we would all be going for financial discipline, very good governance and diversification. So I very much agree with my colleagues here.
Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you for being so active on Slido. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for your questions, but seek out the participants of this panel at the coffee breaks and talk some more. I will have one final question, and please brief answers from each of you. And the question goes, so if each of you had to leave the audience with one no regrets reform that would make energy security more investable, what would it be, Eugenio?
Wow, one no regrets reform.
One no regrets reform.
Liberalization of the market.
Excellent. One more tweetable quote from Eugenio, please.
I mean, I like that a lot, also tariffs, but I have to say, make energy sector governance investor grade. And maybe what I mean by that is really the genuine independency of the supervisory boards. And the supervisory boards having the appropriate powers, composition, and operating in a transparent and a predictable environment.
Thank you. Jeppe?
Well, I agree with that. No, but I think, the point is there are both all the technical and equipment and 10 years development plans and all of that we have talked about, very important, of course, fundamentals. But there's also the economic and corporate governance, and this is key as well. I mean, in the case of Ukraine, it's important for the big state-owned enterprises, for example, that they have this corporatization is successful. It will bring credibility to all the corporations. It will bring more predictable investor environment and so on. This is key. And also the roles are clear. I mean, in our case, we have a shareholder, of course, which is exercised through the Ministry of Energy. And you all saw the scandal last year.
Okay, we will not go into scandal.
No, but it means that we have to rebuild trust. We also have, the independent energy regulator, NERC, of course, which is important, is professional and independent and so on. And of course, we have to be very transparent and accountable ourselves. I mean, in our case, in the supervisory board of...
I will cut you there.
Okay, sorry.
Because we have less than a minute to go. So, Roland, sorry, Jeppe, Roland?
Yeah, so one reform, actually just to continue the existing speed, how we are opening up flexibility markets. because that's a key for the future. So currently, of course, many new participants come from generation side. Consumption is started to add, but we can go even deeper and deeper so that everybody in the system can access to these flexibility markets, so benefit from the system and give their flexibility to the system as well. So let's make our systems more smarter through this market.
Thank you. On that note, thank you very much, Roland, Jeppe, Melis, and Eugeniu. Thank you for your questions, and have a good rest of the conference. Thank you. Thank you very much. On the dot.